everyone. I want to go ahead and give you a short little breakdown of what's going to be on your final exam. I hope that you can go through this and maybe it'll help you study. I've also posted under the modules a practice exam that you can take, which is half the length of the actual exam, and also a list of definitions and terms that you're going to need to know that were covered throughout the chapters. So just a reminder, the exam is 40 questions, it's multiple choice, and it'll be taken just like you've taken all of your other quizzes and your midterm exam. So to start off, I know exams can be a little nerve-wracking, but this is not one that you should be too terribly worried about. You've covered this material over and over and over again, and a lot of it is going to be common sense in regards to what is appropriate when you're speaking publicly. So first, the big one. What are verbal fillers? And I know a lot of you would have seen this if you were in a normal face-to-face class, but you know those people that are, and they fill with those words. So, like are all verbal fillers. So, verbal fillers are not appropriate and you should try to avoid them, but there are ways to avoid them specifically. So one of the best ways that we probably would have talked about if we were in a face-to-face class is to pause. So instead of using a verbal filler like you would pause, recollect your thoughts, and move on. I know that I am even guilty of using them, and I'm sure even the best professors are guilty of using verbal fillers because it's part of our everyday culture. But just be aware of that if there was a question, maybe that you can recognize those verbal fillers. The second one is visual aids. There was an entire chapter on visual aids, specifically PowerPoints. And because we didn't get to use visual aids a lot in this class because it is online, I'd like to hit on that just a little bit. So your visual aids are going to be anything that you use to represent your ideas. It could be handouts, it could be an item or object that you have up in front of the group that you're presenting to, or it could be a PowerPoint, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. So specifically for PowerPoints, you want to make sure that the font is large enough so that they can see it. Make sure that the colors don't clash so that there's a yellow words up on the screen that they can't see because it's on a white background. Be aware not to use too many clashing colors. Don't use too many pictures all on one slide because it can become overly distracting. Also, we commonly use handouts in business settings and when they need to take something away from the presentation. So, when is it appropriate to hand out a handout or a flyer? And the best answer is after the presentation has been completed. Because if you hand out the flyer at the beginning of the presentation, they might become so distracted that they're only reading the flyer and not paying attention to what you're saying. Or if you hand it out in the middle of your presentation, then they are distracted also, and who's going to hand that out? Are you going to hand it out and walk through the entire group while you're still trying to talk? That becomes even distracting to you as a speaker. So just keep those simple things in mind when answering questions. Then the third thing is the difference between nonverbal and verbal communication, which should have been on probably your first midterm exam as well. So verbal communication is obviously what you're actually saying. Nonverbal communication can be anything from my hand gestures, my facial expression, do I look pleasant, do I look angry? It can also go as far as to differentiate between my tone of voice, if I sound angry, and I might not realize that I'm giving nonverbal cues to you, but I am, and you're picking up on them, and they might send mixed messages. So, the fourth one, which is probably the biggest one that's going to be on your exam, and you'll see multiple questions on this, are the logical fallacies. So I would really go over the chapter on persuasion before you begin the exam because it's going to give you a lot of answers so that you can pick out. And the practice exam that I have that's 20 questions long will go through a lot of those logical fallacies. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the comment bandwagon because everyone's doing it, you should too. So jump on the bandwagon. There's also the either-or fallacy in regards to either you do this or this is going to happen. That's how it's generally set up. And that it's a fallacy. It's not correct. They're not using logical thinking when they are representing this information. So please look over those. I don't really have time to go over each and every one, but if you would like me to do a separate little blog thing on that, I can do that, of course. So then the final one that you're going to look at are the types of speeches. And specifically, what is this class, what type of speech do we use for this class? And the most important one would be extemporaneous speaking. Extemporaneous speaking is that you take a lot of time to go over what you're going to talk about, create your outline, yet you don't read it off of a manuscript and you're not just getting up and winging it. So the other types would be impromptu, which is kind of, you come to class, you have 30 seconds, and then you need to give a speech that maybe lasts a minute on any given topic. And you just have to be able to formulate your ideas. A manuscript speech is more like a professional public speech in regards to maybe what the president gives and so on. So to sum that all up, these are probably the top 5 things that you're really going to want to look over. And definitely there's going to be more on the exam, so please look over also my different material that I posted online. If you have any questions about the exam, just let me know and we can study and review for that. So good luck, and I hope you do the very best that you can.